I'm Christina.
And I'm Matt.
And this is New Ways Podcast. Today, our guest is a happiness coach as well as founder and CEO of Hit of Happiness. Brian Dubow, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to jump into this. So to kind of start off then, what is Hit of Happiness?
So Hit of Happiness is my company. I started it about 5 years ago, and we're a happiness coaching and consulting company. But realistically, we're a movement. Like, to me, what is Hit of Happiness? It's a reminder to people that happiness is a choice. I think so many people just go through life being like, oh, it's this elusive thing. And I see Hit of Happiness as a movement, a community of people who are trying to make life count, who are, this life is short. It's not a test run, it's not a dress rehearsal. Like, this is it. So if we have to go through it, we might as well be happy. And to me, it's a group of people who are trying to live their healthiest and happiest lives.
Okay, I love that. And when I hear like happiness, what it means to be happy, I literally just have so many questions right off the bat and want to
Shoot 'em.
give you my own perspective. But before we get deep into that, because it's going to be a very intriguing conversation, I want to know who is Brian? How'd you come up with this idea of basing your company around happiness? How would you get to this point?
Yeah, so as you could guess, when I was 4 years old, I wanted to be a happiness coach.
Yeah, of course. Isn't that what everybody wants when they're 4?
As one does, exactly. Now, this came to me in a way I never could have imagined, if I'm being honest. So actually, I started my career as an accountant. I'm a CPA. I did my master's in accounting. When I was young, I always did have a curious mind. And I remember as I was studying accounting in college, it was mostly because my dad was an accountant. And it was like, oh, I grew up in a family where I'm going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant. I'm good with numbers. Accounting makes sense. And I remember at one point in college, I was like, maybe this isn't that exciting. Really starting to be honest with myself of what actually makes me happy. Is I never really asked myself what made me happy growing up. And I remember at one point I walked into the guidance counselor's office and was like, I think I'm going to pick up a minor in philosophy or maybe entrepreneurship. These are the things that really excite me. Those were the conversations I liked having on the side. And the guidance counselor was like, yeah, those are cool. But if you want to get a job after college, you should probably pair accounting with actuarial science, which for those who don't know, that's like the calculations for insurance companies. So calculating the likelihood of someone dying or something.
So really nothing that you wanted to do.
Nothing I wanted to do. So I felt like my life, and this is just society in the path, was constantly pushing towards what makes sense to make a lot of money. That was kind of the journey that life was pushing me on. And I got in theory, the dream job, or as good of a job as I could with an accounting major, which was deals consulting in New York at a company called PwC, one of the big 4 accounting firms. And, I did that, and it was a great experience. I spent the first couple of years learning a ton. I was in the room with CEOs and CFOs at a very young age. And I was traveling all over. I had clients in Palo Alto, Austin, Minneapolis, Ireland, all over. But I got to a point where I was getting society's definition of happiness and success, which was making good money, more money than most of my friends, early promoted and being told that I was on the fast track to partner. Stick with us, Brian. We'll take care of you. I had parents who were super proud of their son and saying their son works in deals consulting in New York City at the big company. And I had social media, which was me traveling all around the world and staying in fancy hotels and expensing lavish meals, But the reality of my life is that I was working 80 plus hours a week. I was on a plane every Monday to Thursday, didn't have time to do my laundry or date or any of the things that people in their early 20s in New York should be doing. I kind of felt like I was lacking purpose or meaning. Yes, I was helping Fortune 50 companies close multi-billion-dollar deals, but I was like, there's got to be more to this. Because at the end of the day, what that looked like was spending hours and hours staring at a computer, being in Excel. And I was just like, there's no way humans have been around for hundreds of thousands of years for me to have this experience. Like, I'm here for something bigger than this, and I don't know what that is. And I was like, this is it. This is the quarter life crisis. I have made it. And maybe you guys have had quarter life crises as well.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, I feel like this is a product of probably a quarter life crisis, to be honest with you.
This podcast.
Exactly. Completely.
I hear y'all.
Okay. So you decided I'm going through a quarter life crisis, and then what?
And then I was like, okay, let me see what else is out there. You know, what are other ways to be living a life? And also, first of all, what is a meaningful life to me? And so first, one question that really popped into my head, and one thought, I remember I was on a walk and I was thinking about life, and I was like, okay, so I'm in my mid-20s now. Chances are, knock on wood, assuming nothing is tragic, I'll live until my 80s, let's say. That's like average. So I have 60 years left here on earth, right? And I was like, okay, 60 years left here on earth. Isn't life just figuring out how to pass that time? Isn't that the real game I'm playing right now? Like, I'm just figuring out how to kill 60 years until it's over. And if that's the game, the next question in my head was like, well, what does killing that look like? And how do I want to use those years? And it was like, well, I want to enjoy those years. So to me, the riddle to be solved became like, how can I optimize the enjoyment of the passage of time? Knowing that I have 60 years left, how do I optimize the enjoyment of the passage of time? And then the next question became, what does enjoyment look like for me? And that's something that's individual for everyone, because, you know, that depends on your risk tolerance. If you have a high risk tolerance, like entrepreneurship is a tool to enjoy the passage of time. If you have a low risk tolerance, a corporate job is a great tool to enjoy the passage of time. You know, that it's also, you know, I like extreme things. I like marathons. I do an Ironman. Like, that's a tool to feel the edges of the human experience, you know, to feel alive. So it just got me thinking about like how everything is kind of just a tool to enjoy or not enjoy the passage of time, and how can I optimize for those tools?
When you said find something that's going to make you happy, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would be like, well, I know what's going to make me happy, but it's not going to make me money, right? Because oddly enough, though, I feel like since we are all programmed to kind of like go into a job that is just going to support us and maybe not fulfill us, we all think that like you can't make money off of something while being happy doing it. You know, people correlate happiness a lot of times with just a smile on your face, going to the beach, going on vacations, like heavily drinking sometimes. What made you think then, hey, I'm going to be happy doing this and I can make money off of it?
Totally. So I guess I'll get back to my story.
Please, by all means.
I'm a big believer that a lot of people think like, when I make money, I'll then be happy. And I'm a big believer that actually when you're happy, money comes to you because you become magnetic and people just want to hang out with you. And all these opportunities start coming into your life. So I think the equation is flipped, but I'll kind of get to how I got to that belief. So as I was having this, you know, quarter life crisis, I started reading all the self-help books. I started having coffee chats with as many people as I could who are living just untraditional lives or different lives than what you just described. I call it the path. The path, like you go to high school, you get the best possible college. You go to college, you get the best possible job. You stay in that job for 40 years, you retire, then you start living.
Your life's over at your 20s. And I'm like, huh? Yeah.
Right. You forgot to live, you know? So I had a lot of coffee chats with artists, entrepreneurs, executives, even partners at my company, like all different type of people, just having real dialogue of like, hey, I'm second guessing everything. And even partners at my company were like, hey, I remember that phase. I did too. You know, so when you are, well, I found that was when I was honest, other people were honest with me. And one of the most impactful coffee chats that I had was with this professor out of Harvard. His name was Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, and he was one of the lead thinkers on the science of happiness. He actually taught the most popular class at Harvard, which was on happiness. And this was before happiness was cool, before COVID. You know?
Real quick, how'd you meet with him then? That sounds like an impressive guy.
Yeah. So my mom had seen him give a keynote at an event in Miami. And she was like, I think you'd resonate with his message. You should reach out to him. And so I sent him a cold email. There's kind of two facets. So I kind of gamified it. I'm very good at getting what I want. I'm very good at finding the third door. I was the head of connectivity at PwC. So I reached out to him with two facets. Like, hey, my mom saw you speak. She said, you know, you were great. I'd love to talk to you about what you're doing. And I know you have a program that you offer. So I'd love to learn more about that. Also, I'm the head of connectivity for my group at PwC. We'd potentially want to bring you in to speak. So I think that also was something that like made him more likely to show up. And he responded and he was like, hey, I'll be in Brooklyn next Friday. Do you have time to grab a quick coffee? It's like, yep, I'll make it happen. So met him in Brooklyn a week later. I thought it'd be 15 minutes or so. It ended up being like 2 hours. And by the end of it, I was like, whatever Kool-Aid this guy's drinking, I want to drink that Kool-Aid too.
Yeah.
So I spent the next year studying under him, Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, to become a certified happiness trainer and coach. And that was a year-long deep dive into the science of happiness, learning what actually makes us happy versus what we think makes us happy. But more importantly, for me, that was the first year of my life of being very intentional around doing things that make me happy. Because in life, we pay attention to what we measure. And what we measure is our bank account. We measure things that don't necessarily align with our happiness. So by actually creating KPIs around what makes me happy and experimenting with that, experimenting with, different forms of exercise, experimenting with who I was surrounding myself with, who was energizing me, who was depleting me, setting boundaries, experimenting with sleep schedules, experimenting with different diets. A year later, I would say my happiness went from something like a 3 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10, while still working that same exact job. And for me, that really showed me that happiness is an inside job. And I was giving so much credit up until then to my external environment and saying like, oh yeah, when I get the next promotion, then I'll be happy. Or when I meet my wife, then I'll be happy. When in reality, it was changing my habits every day, changing my morning routine, changing who I surrounded myself with that dramatically impacted my happiness. And I thought, if this can work for me, why can't this work for other people? Mm-hmm. That being said, I never thought I was starting a business at this point. At this point, it was just like, this is a cool side hobby to feel fulfillment. I couldn't really fathom making a full living at that point. So my life to get to where I am today has been a bunch of just micro pivots where at first it was coaching on the side. And that was just really fulfilling. I only had time for a couple clients because at the end of the day, I was still working 70, 80-hour weeks in consulting. Then at a certain point, it was actually when COVID hit. At that point, I was like, okay, like that gave us all this pause, this time to reflect on what really matters in life. I assume you guys had a bit of a pause at that moment as well. My life slowed down dramatically. I went from flying to Ireland every week to back in my parents' house because I didn't want to be in my New York studio apartment in the beginning of COVID. So upon reflecting, I was like, okay, I'm really out on consulting. And what I found was an opportunity to switch into human capital strategy internally at PwC. So that was about how do we motivate our employees, how do we retain our employees, and how do we incentivize our employees? And so there I was able to build a business case for happiness in the workplace and start leading workshops at my company. And in the beginning, it was for small teams. And eventually I was leading workshops for my entire market, like New York Metro, 2,000 plus people at a time. And when I was doing that, it was really successful. We created a series, got to lead workshops all around the country. And so that was like, oh my God, this is crazy. I never could have planned this. And I also had a bunch of just aha moments on that journey. One was we had done workshops on mindfulness and maybe 100 people had showed up. When we did our first workshop on happiness, 2,000 people showed up. So 20x just because of the word happiness and the gravitas to that word. And to me, that kind of shows that like the average person, again, we're in LA, we're awake. We are surrounded by people who go to 10-day silent meditation retreats and people who do sound baths. So the average person in the corporate world, mindfulness sounds like hippies in robes who went to Woodstock or Burning Man, and they want nothing to do with that. Versus happiness is this thing that's like, yeah, I want that. Or there's, this is something I heard once after one of my workshops. A partner was like, I haven't been happy in 30 years. Happiness in the workplace, that doesn't belong here. Why should we start now? Ooh. So there is that level of programming, but it's also this word that everyone has a response to. It's like, why do we do anything we do in our lives? Because we think it'll make us happy. So this showed me that there was a demand for happiness, that it could be successful in a multi-billion-dollar company. But at the end of the day, a big portion of my job was still not the most fulfilling. So I kind of saw this as a proof of concept. If I can do this at a company like this, why can't I do this anywhere? So at that point, I thought about exit plans. One was just quit and start a business immediately. At this point, I had already started a blog and a podcast, but it wasn't, I wasn't making any money off of it. That was just me starting to build myself as a thought leader. The other option was I applied to business school, and I thought of that as like, I can buy myself 2 years to figure out what the business of happiness really looks like. Because I knew I was onto something, but I had no idea what I was onto. And so I got into UCLA Anderson. That's what brought me out here. Top entrepreneurship school, and also an opportunity to be in LA, where they are pretty receptive to wellness and happiness. You two are in that space as well, so we know that.
Yeah.
And that was the next journey. So I'll stop for a second. Any questions, or should I keep going?
No, please keep going. I mean, geez, it's really fascinating hearing your story, because there's so many levels of it that I feel like we could dive into. I'm curious. One thing that you talked about was that you and your company built a series, almost like, and within this workshop, you had, multiple things that you guys talked about to kind of help not only motivate employees, but also educate them. Mm-hmm. So I kind of would like to actually talk a little bit about some of those things that you educated people on how to create that kind of happiness within those work environments.
Absolutely. So I think there's tiers to happiness, and you have to meet people where they are at. But in the beginning, I would say, and this was a realization on my journey, my 1 year of becoming a certified happiness trainer and coach, the quote that really I'd remind myself of every day was mood follows action. Mood follows action. And what I mean by that is most people wait until they're energized to go exercise. They wait until they feel calm to meditate. They wait until they feel bubbly, social, whatever, to go be amongst humans. When in reality, the opposite is true. By exercising, we feel energized. By meditating, let's take one breath together. By taking that one breath, we feel calm. By being together, I already feel more connected, and I could go on a road trip with you too. We've been together for 30 minutes or less. So, mood follows action. It's about how can we get people to start focusing on the actions that lead them to be happy. And I like to say that happiness is actually a habit. It's building habits to do the things that are scientifically proven to make us happier. And I have a framework for 5 things you can do every day to be the happiest version of yourself. And the biggest excuse I get when people are like, like that, all of that, I don't have time for a morning routine. I have kids, or I have this, I have that. It's like, you can do all these things in probably 20 minutes. And this is the difference between your bad days being a 1, 2, or 3 out of 10 versus your bad days being a 7 out of 10. And your good days being a 5 or 6 out of 10 versus your good days being a 10 out of 10. So to me, all of these habits, which I'll talk about now, are about hedging your day. Do you want your bad days to be a 7, or do you want your bad days to be a 2? And if you want your bad days to be a 7 and your good days to be a 10, then I like to say, practice magic. Mindfulness, activity, gratitude, inspiration, and connection. Mindfulness, activity, gratitude, inspiration, and connection. So 5 things you can do. You can do all of them in 20 minutes or less. And to go through it really quickly, mindfulness is, and you guys know this based off what you do, but being present, being mindful of what is going on. And a lot of people think mindfulness has to be 15 minutes of sitting down. And it's like, who has time for that? Mindfulness can literally be that one breath we just took. Mindfulness can be a part of your habits you're already doing. Like when you drink coffee in the morning, pay attention to the fact that you're drinking coffee in the morning. Taste the coffee in the morning. It can be when you're calling a friend, be there with the friend as opposed to also scrolling social media at the same time. My biggest recommendation for mindfulness is we have so many downloads when we sleep. Our subconscious comes through. Yet first thing in the morning, what most people check their phone immediately. And the moment we check our phone, we're acknowledging the world's to-do list for us as opposed to our own to-do list for us. So we're losing all of that genius, all that intuition, all that subconscious. So if we can even just take 1 minute when we wake up and write down what's top of mind. You guys have probably heard of like the morning pages. Mm-hmm. That's a process where it's really downloading and that's like 30 minutes of journaling every morning. But even if you don't have 30 minutes, take 1 minute to note like what came through over the night. What is your intuition trying to tell you? What are your 3 most important tasks for the day, as opposed to checking your emails and text and being told what you should think is important by society or by your friends or by your parents. Is we know what's important to us, but we get away from that. So that's mindfulness, activity, moving our bodies. And to me, that's the quickest way to just flip our energy, flip our spirit. And again, people think it's like, I don't have time for 1 hour at the gym, but do you have time for 20 jumping jacks? You have time for 20 jumping jacks. And for me, honestly, a lot of times I'll be going into a Zoom call or a coaching call, I'll be feeling a little low. It's like, let me do 20 jumping jacks and 20 push-ups. And all of a sudden my energy's on fire again. And it's like, we all have time for that. We all have 40 seconds. So that's activity, moving our bodies, taking a walk for 5 minutes, whatever it is. Like there's a study that found that 30 minutes of exercise 3 times per week, so 90 minutes of exercise total, is more impactful than the leading antidepressants on the market.
Really?
The leading antidepressants on the market.
30 minutes 3 times a day seems like nothing to
3 times a week.
Do you think 3 times a week? Did I say a day?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. 30 minutes 3 times a week
Even
seems
if it was 3 times a day, it'd be worth it, honestly. Yeah.
No, completely. And what really flipped a switch for me one day is I actually looked at like my screen time on my phone, and there was no reason I had to be on my phone all day. I'm like, why the heck was I on my phone for like 2 hours today?
Totally.
And like you're telling me, look at your screen time and tell me if you have time. That's all I'm saying.
We all have time.
Yeah.
We all have time. And I'm asking for 20 minutes. I'm not asking for 3 hours. Eventually, if you go on this consciousness journey, you're going to have a 2-hour morning routine. We all get there. But in the beginning, it's 20 minutes. Find 20 minutes and it can be spread out throughout the day. So activity is some type of movement. And if you're listening to this right now, start doing 20 jumping jacks while you're listening. You'll notice a difference by the end of those 20 jumping jacks.
Unless you're driving, do a little dance. But
driving, yeah, move your shoulders dance a little bit or something fun. You can't, if you get in an accident, you can't sue us. You
guys, Brian told you to do it.
Yeah, you heard it from a happiness coach, so you have to listen.
That's great.
The third is gratitude. And to me, this is massive. And we aren't naturally grateful beings. We have the same brains that humans had tens of thousands of years ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago, where we were worried about getting eaten alive in the middle of the night by lions and tigers and bears and dinosaurs. And so we were constantly looking for the threat in our lives. But now we are sitting in very comfortable chairs. We have roofs over our head. Life is pretty good for most of us. Not everyone, of course, but most of us are not worried about a lion, a tiger, or a bear attacking us in the middle of the night. But our brains are hardwired to look for the problems. And therefore, I would bet that most of you fixate not on what's going well in your life, but what's not going well in your life. But for every one thing that's not going well in your life, chances are you have 6 things that are going well. And are you a tennis player by any chance?
I'm not.
You're not. Okay.
Pickleball.
Pickleball's
close.
Yep. So I'll give just an example. In a set of tennis, the first person to win 6 games wins the set. Then you move on to the next set. If you win 6 games and lose 1 game in tennis, you don't care about that 1 game you lost because you won the set and you move on. Yet in life, when 1 thing goes wrong and 6 things go right, instead of focusing on the fact that we won the set, we focus on the 1 thing that went wrong. Yeah. So gratitude to me helps us focus on all the things that are going well. And once we start focusing on things that are going well in our lives, we start noticing more things that are going well. And this is kind of also how manifestation happens, where you start noticing opportunities, you start creating more because life becomes such a blessing. And I like to say that when you appreciate the good in your life, the good appreciates in value.
Yeah.
When you appreciate the good in your life, the good appreciates in value. So there's so much that's good in all of our lives. And I bet we can all think of many things right now. You know, in a corporate workshop, I'll ask people to list as many things as they can in a minute, and people come with 20 plus things. But I would challenge everyone who's listening right now to think of one person in your life that you're really grateful for, and you don't let them know it enough. And if you're really feeling bold, shoot them a text and let them know you're thinking about them. And for the sake of it, I'd love to know who's one person in both of your lives who you're super grateful for, but you don't let them know it enough.
That I don't let them know it enough?
Yeah. Who needs to hear it? And then you'll send them this podcast.
Honestly, probably. And it's probably just because it's like been a near and dear like thing to my heart lately is my dad. My dad was actually in the hospital last week. So like, I'm like, I talk to him maybe like 2 or 3 times a month. And like, it's so weird that unfortunately as humans though, you're like, we do wait for tragedy to be like, holy shit. Like I love that person so much and I do want to spend more time with them. And it's so weird because I feel like as tragic as an experience that was, like I feel closer to him.
Totally.
You know, because now I'm just like, he's coming to visit me. I'm excited. Like, but yeah, shout out dad.
Shout out dad.
I would say one of my buddies, Travis. Travis, you know who you are. He's the only one of like my last surviving people on Snapchat.
On Snapchat.
I don't mean to be that person, but
you're the real MVP right here.
But no, he sends me a good morning Snapchat almost every single morning. And I could be having the worst morning ever, worst day ever. And just seeing it just makes my day.
Amazing.
And it's just like, I appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
Do you send him one back?
Yeah, occasionally. Yeah. Sometimes I get like busy and I just like leave it. I'm like, and then I'll do it later. But yeah, I try to do it as much as I can because it's just like it's a very wholesome, very small thing that takes less than 5 seconds to do. Yeah. But it just means the world to me.
We all need a Travis in our lives.
Yeah.
Don't we?
I love those friends who are like, hey, you were on my mind. Have a great day. Like,
yeah. Yes. Like just thinking about you, you know? Absolutely.
What about you? Who's your person?
My person right now, who I'm grateful for, but I don't let them know it enough. It's honestly both of my parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love them so much and they do anything for me. And I just feel like I could make more of an effort to let them know it more. They live in Miami. I live in California. So, I see them, I don't know, 6 times a year.
Oh, that's a lot though for living in different states too.
Yeah, it is a lot. But I think I could do more. And it's not necessarily seeing them more, but letting them know that my appreciation is there.
Yeah. And I do want to elaborate too, because this is something that I really struggled with. And I'm actually curious your opinion is that like, I used to beat myself up that I wasn't doing enough. And like you doing something out of obligation versus like actually genuinely appreciating somebody for what they have to offer and who they are. Those give off 2 different energies completely. So like take a beat. Don't just do it like, oh, like Brian told me to go do this, so I'm going to go do it. Remember why you're doing it. And that is what makes the biggest difference also.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the intentionality is everything. And don't say you're grateful for someone because you should. Who are you actually grateful for? Yeah. Or it could be, what are you actually grateful for? Mm-hmm. It could be a thing that just treat it better, but feel that inside of you because that is also making you happier. And, I have a practice of writing down 3 things I'm grateful for every morning. And then as I go about my days, I notice more things I'm grateful for. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to write this down tomorrow. And that gets me in this headspace. I'm creating neural pathways in my brain to look for more things to be grateful for. And then all of a sudden my life is just so abundant. Yeah. And that can happen for anyone.
Yeah.
Agree. Remember when Donovan said 100 thank yous?
Yep.
We had a guest on here who was like, I just started doing like, eventually I made it up to 100 thank yous, but I started with 1 or 2. Yeah. And he said that was so impactful in his life. Yeah. So besides that though, please continue with your framework.
So the I is inspiration, finding something that inspires you every day. I think a lot of us go through our lives and it's just this again, same thing every day. Find something that's out of the ordinary that inspires you or makes you think different. And chances are, if something inspires you, it's because you see a part of yourself within that thing. So it could be listening to a TED Talk. It could be this podcast. This could be your inspiration for the day. It could be simply doing the daily Wordle or something that just gets your mind thinking differently. Sometimes I play with Play-Doh as I'm drinking my coffee in the morning. Allow your inner child to come out, but something that inspires you every day. And again, that can take 1 to 2 minutes. And it can often be talking to a friend. Call that friend who always inspires you and just like, hey man, give me something to think about today. I have a friend that I do that often.
Really?
Yeah, give me something to think about today because I just know he's super plugged into all the interesting podcasts. He's listening to Tim Ferriss. He's listening to Rich Roll. He's listening. And I know he has so many.
He's going to hit you with
great
something.
Fun facts. He's going to hit me with something. I'm like, ooh, I need to chew on that today.
I like that.
Yeah. So find something that inspires you, someone that inspires you. Just be intentional with that every day. Yeah. And the last one is connection. So connection, as we know, or maybe not know, relationships are the number one predictor of happiness. We live in an era where the biggest epidemic in America is not COVID, it's loneliness.
Yeah.
So, how can we beat this? It's through connection and not just social media connections. Not like I have 1 million followers on social media. I've coached those people and they're not happy. It's about quality of relationships, an ability to be vulnerable with people, an ability to feel seen, feel heard. And the simplest thing for this, in my opinion, is the first question we tend to ask people is, how are you? And chances are your response is what?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah, very basic, fine. Very superficial.
Good.
Yeah.
Did we just get any closer?
I'm well.
No. So what question could you be asking to actually get to know people? And like, it could be as simple as, how are you really? And then, an exercise I like to do is like, hey, I'm going to ask you, how are you really? You're going to respond for 1 full minute and I'm just going to listen. And it's crazy what people say. You get to know someone so much better and that takes 1 minute. How are you really? But if you don't want to go like really deep, it could just be, what's inspiring you today? There's so many different questions. And I'm sure you both have a question you like to ask. What's your question you like to ask people?
What makes today great?
What makes today great? Exactly.
That's a good one I like doing.
That's very different from, how are you?
Yeah.
Good, you. Great. So being intentional about, I want to connect with someone today. And if you don't have time to be out in the world and, get coffee with someone or call someone, it can still be as simple as, hey, a text that says, hey, I just want you to know that I'm thinking about you. What's inspiring you today? Mm-hmm. We all have time to send that text and respond to that text.
I love that. I also think it could be super beneficial too, where it's like, as much as you might think, oh, I don't have time today, is like finding the time in the things that you're already doing. Because a lot of us though, like if we work for big corporations, we go into work and we see the same people every single day, but do you actually try connecting, not just like talking to them, but connecting with them and getting to a deeper level. Don't just ask them, hey, how are you? Say, hey, like, don't you have kids? How are they doing today? Or like, what's going on in your life that's new? Like, you might find connection in places that you would never expect to find it.
Totally. Yeah. And I do a lot of corporate consulting and I go into corporations and the question becomes, how do we implement these things? And it's like, let's eliminate good you. Like no one's allowed to respond good you or you get buzzed, on this team. Or, I have one team I worked with, we started mindful minutes. So anytime you start a meeting, there's 1 mindful minute. No work is happening in that first minute. If you need to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. If you need to just breathe together, take 6 breaths together, but no work happens in the first minute. Because most people go from Zoom call to Zoom call to Zoom call. You're still thinking about the first Zoom call when you're in the third Zoom call. So just creating like little habits or systems that allow you to be present, something like a mindful minute. But there's ways to bring this into any corporate setting.
Yeah. No, I love that so much. And for our listeners right now too, we are going to go ahead and pick Brian's mind in the next episode about how to cultivate a little bit more happiness in your life. So please tune into the next one. And for now, Brian, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your journey with us and that little bit of inspiration right there. And I can't wait to jump into the next podcast.
Thank you for having me. This was fun. We're just getting started.
I know, right? We are. It's going to go deep, you guys. Yeah. It's going to go deep. But until next time, I love you.
Thank you so much, and keep shining your light.
Thanks all.